Hello and welcome to another episode of Bailiwick Podcasts. I'm Jodie Yettram and today I'll be speaking with a mental health consultant about wellbeing in the workplace to mark Mental Health Awareness Week. Jennifer Neill has set up a new business to help employers improve the wellbeing of their employees, and she is here today to talk to us about it. So Jennifer, welcome. Please could you just quickly introduce yourself and tell me a little bit more about what you do and what your new business entails?
So I'm Jennifer. Hi, thank you for having me. So I've worked in the field of wellbeing and mental health for a number of years now, and even before that in all the other careers that I had, there was always an undertone of people experiencing mental health and or poor mental health and not really knowing how to manage or support that, or lacking even the awareness that there was an issue in the first place. Mm-hmm. So after many years of working through different charities, I decided to start my own business and try and support those people out there who may be wanting to upskill themselves. And the fact that we spend so much of our time in the workplace, I thought, what a great place to start.
Mm-hmm. So you work with employers and sort of give them guidance on how they might better support their employees. And when did you set up the business?
So I've been delivering mental health first aid, which is like physical first aid, but for people who are experiencing poor mental health, since 2019. Mm-hmm. And from that, I grew to creating and designing my own bespoke packages that I would offer to corporates, whatever that organisation needed. Mm-hmm. So I was doing that under the support of Mind Jersey. I was working for them for a number of years, and this year, after having my daughter in 2022, I decided to start my own business and do it for myself.
Mm-hmm. I've never heard of that before, mental health first aid. Could you elaborate on that a bit more? Because first aid is sort of like a quick fix to an injury or something. How does that relate to the context of mental health and wellbeing?
I mean, you've pretty much nailed it. So just like physical first aid, You're not trained to become a doctor, surgeon, physician. Mm-hmm. You're that first point of contact until professional help arrives. Mm-hmm. So if someone trips on the ground in front of you and they cut their leg, you would treat the wound, and then if it required it, you would send them on to A&E. Mm-hmm. So mental health first aid is exactly the same. You're the first port of call for someone in crisis sometimes, or someone who just has the early warning signs of developing poor mental health or mental illness. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes it takes that external person to view something that's not quite right in an individual. There's so much stigma that surrounds mental health. Often we don't realise the things that are happening to us, or we're too afraid to reach out and ask for help. Mm-hmm. And unlike our physical health, we don't have that much knowledge and awareness from a young age about how to support our mental health. Mm-hmm. So, for example, when you were very little and you grew your first tooth, everyone around you told you to brush it. Mm-hmm. And then you kept up with your dental hygiene. If you had a problem with your tooth, you would go to the dentist. Mm-hmm. We don't have the luxury of having that education out the gate for mental health. It's getting much, much better now. And it's so positive that the younger people in schools now are getting education about mental health and well-being. But certainly I didn't, and certainly the generation above me didn't have that. Yeah, so that's where mental health first aid comes in, helping identify the signs that are attributed to poor mental health, and then how to support. And it might be professional help, or it might be just a case of improving self-care. Mm-hmm. So that's...
And in terms of mental health in the workplace, obviously very important that we feel supported in our jobs and we feel that our employers want the best for our mental well-being. I wonder if you could talk about maybe some repeated issues that you're seeing within workplaces, or repeated problems that employees are experiencing in their day-to-day lives at their jobs. What are the key issues at the moment?
There's a number, but what I like to introduce as a theme or a concept, I'm not coining it, but we're facing uncharted territories in the fact that turnover is so significant for employees at the moment. And we had worked through what we called the Great Recession. Mm-hmm. Now we're in the Great Resignation. People will not tolerate not being supported. And I'm a prime example of this. Every career that I've ever worked in or profession, I've left because the employer wasn't supporting my well-being in the way that I needed. Mm-hmm. So there's been a recent study by Deloitte that saw the cost of poor mental health on employers. The total cost is 56 billion in the UK each year.
That's crazy.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's just unheard of. Mm-hmm. And if we break those cost down into three sections, it's absenteeism, which is when you're off work sick through poor health. Presenteeism, when you should be off work due to your health, but you actually still come in and you're not as productive as you should be. And the final one is turnover. So the leading cost, which has been around, has always been the leader, is presenteeism. So people coming into work when they should be home at rest.
Wow.
Yeah, and this is poor mental health, remember, not just physical health.
Yeah.
So if you break your leg, the doctor will say, no, stay off it for 6 weeks, rest it, and it will improve. If you don't rest it, it's only going to get worse and you're prolonging the problem. If you're unwell at work and you still come to work, you're not only allowing yourself the recovery time and rest. So we think we're doing work a favour by coming in, but actually we make more mistakes. We miss deadlines. We're probably not going to the meetings we should be. We're probably not performing at the rate we can be when we're fully well. And so that cost is 27 billion for presenteeism.
So crazy. And that's just the effect on the business, not even the effect on the individual.
Exactly. This is just pounds and pennies.
This
has no kind of personal impact story. What I mentioned about turnover, people won't tolerate it. In 2019, the same Deloitte organisational survey saw that 8 billion costs were attributed to the employee each year. Now that has risen to 22 billion. So in 3 years, turnover has increased so much. And it's because people, like I said, if they don't feel supported, they won't stay.
So this basically shows that we've got this huge issue with retention and with loss of productivity, and a lot of the reason for that is because people don't feel supported at work and they won't tolerate it, which is obviously a problem that you're seeking to address through your business. So just in terms of potential solutions and potential ways that employers can better support their workforce, what do you think are the key ways that employers can create a culture that's supportive?
It seems like a really simple first solution answer that I'm going to give here, but everybody likes to be seen, and so getting to know your staff is really important. One, you can notice change. So the biggest indicator of poor mental health is a change in whether it's behaviour, their physical appearance, whether their emotional state. If you know someone, you'll notice when they start acting differently or their performance slips, and then you can intervene. One of the big problems is that all the kind of preventative strategies in place are reactive at the minute rather than proactive. But getting to know your staff is a good start, and scheduling regular check-ins. It shouldn't cost too much of your time to have regular one-to-one meetings with staff. If an organisation tells me that they haven't got time for one-to-ones, then they deserve to have a high turnover rate, in my opinion. But for larger organisations and smaller ones too, a really good starting point is conducting a wellbeing survey. Find out what the general theme is within your organisation, and then you can start to kind of amend it. Every organisation is different, and what I might suggest to a construction industry organisation, or what I might suggest to a finance industry or a health provision service, they'll be completely different, because the demographics of the people working there will be different. The shift in working patterns will be different. So you just can't, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. You need to find out what the organisation's employees need and then look to provide that.
And you think that the change sort of needs to come from the top down rather than the bottom up?
Absolutely. Role modelling is key. And if you've got buy-in from the top, it's been proven that that's going to have more effective strategy implementations. If your leaders or managers or higher level employees or board members even are open and willing to sharing, you create the culture and environment that it's safe to do so. If my line manager shared that they've had a period of poor mental health or that they've been stressed, I will feel more willing to share my story, because I'll know that they'll understand and have empathy. There's a kind of stigma that surrounds mental health that says you can't do. When managers start acknowledging what someone can do and being supportive when they raise problems and help them find a solution, then you're going to have a much more calm, positive work environment where people do feel like they can share.
And I just wanted to maybe talk a little bit about ways that employers can create sort of an inclusive work environment. Maybe people might have certain like mental health disorders. I just wanted to ask you how employers can help create an inclusive workplace that makes everyone feel included, and maybe what the benefits of that culture would be.
Thankfully in Jersey we are quite progressive in terms of our supporting our many wonderful diverse islanders. you mentioned having a mental health disorder. Mental health is actually a protected factor under law, so the Mental Health Law 2016. So an employer can't discriminate. But having effective policies in place, certainly having a wellbeing policy is a great start, but having those policies that challenge discriminatory behaviour and having managers that openly challenge people, small things that to create inclusivity, having your pronouns on your signature, supporting international holidays, supporting local holidays, having a very visible support of the LGBTQ plus community, it depends on organisation size and cost, but having kind of cultural awareness about some employees may need to pray at certain times of the day and allowing that. I do a lot of work with the wonderful Kate, who you've had on recently, we're creating a working group with 31 wonderful, intelligent women about the gender gap and trying to close that. Well, we're not trying to close it personally. We're trying to promote organisations to be more transparent in producing the information about their gender gaps. But I suppose just making sure that people can be seen, have visibility, and there's access for all.
Yeah, and that's moving away from the whole tick box exercise thing where it's we'll put a rainbow flag up one day a year but then not do anything to support our queer employees. I think that's what you're saying is actually about engaging with these communities and listening to actually what they want. And acknowledging and recognising them, I think is really important.
Oh, when I first started working in wellbeing, the way you promoted wellbeing in the workforce was you had a bowl of fruit in the kitchen. You might still have a bowl of fruit, but that's just eating 5 fruit and veg a day doesn't help me become a more well-rounded person. That's just one element of it. No point in having a fruit bowl if you're going to make me work 10 hours extra a week.
You mentioned implementing a wellbeing strategy would be one way to promote good mental health and a positive culture within an organisation. Obviously it will differ between different types of sectors, but what are some different things that a strategy might entail? What are some different concepts or ideas that could be included?
Like I said, every organisation is different, and some organisations might already have a policy that supports people, but two big ones for me, and I suppose they kind of fall into the same bracket, is keeping contact with people when they are unwell. People think, there's that taboo as, I don't want to reach out, or I don't know what to say, so they say nothing, which is worse. People just fall into the void. So that's why I do the sort of work that I do, delivering training to line managers to help those difficult conversations. And one of the things that we do is introduce employee wellness action plans. So what your employee looks like when they're well, what it looks like when they're unwell, and how to start those conversations. And that plan is written with an employee and an employer together. So you've got to win. If someone's sick and you don't know how to reach out, you go to the wellness action plan. They tell me to be direct. Don't tiptoe around the subject. I'm not a child. Don't patronise me, because sometimes it's a bit of even if someone doesn't have a mental illness, it's just nice to know how people like to be talked to. Do you prefer emails? Do you prefer texts? And then I suppose the second point would be having a flexible policy around not even just returning to work, but how we work anyway. And this could be called reasonable adjustments. If someone, we talked about supporting inclusivity. If someone's neurodiverse and working in an office layout like the one we're in now, where all the desks are in the same room and it's loud and it's busy, they might not be able to thrive in that space. So having the opportunity to book out a boardroom or move to the outside of the hub or work a couple of mornings from home so they don't have to go through traffic, because that might be overwhelming or anxiety inducing. These are small things that allows a person to work to their best capability rather than working in that that peg hole that they don't fit in because they're a square and the hole's a circle.
Perfectly leads on to my next question, which was about sort of the value of flexible working arrangements, and that just doesn't have to be just working from home or working remotely. That can mean all sorts of things, and also about reasonable adjustments. I wondered if you could tell me maybe a bit about how flexible working and work from home can be of value to a business, and what you'd say to those businesses that might be hesitant to incorporate those sort of practices into their culture.
I think organisations can be hesitant because of the level of trust that it gives the individual at home. But I would just say trust everyone until they give you the reason not to.
Yeah.
You'll find that most people do become more productive when in a space they feel most comfortable. Now, whether that's creating the office to become that more comfortable environment for them or allowing it to do it in a space that is already comfortable to them, like home. I think there's a real danger in the fact that some people still can burn out even when at home. And we saw this in the pandemic. The rates of burnout were in the kind of 60s to 70%, and people are at home. Some people find it very difficult to switch off if they don't have that physical leaving the space, and there's no boundary line to the end of the day apart from your own self-monitoring. That's where it becomes difficult. So for a lot of people, their laptop is their work and personal laptop, or they get emails to their phone and Teams on their phone, because not many employers provide a second phone unless it's in an industry that requires it. So it's really hard to unplug.
It is.
It is. And there's loads of like wonderful things that apps can do today, like monitoring, time limiting, but it needs that cooperation between employer and employee. Like if an employer sees someone regularly sending emails in the early hours of the morning or on Sundays or on bank holidays, some offices operate in bank holidays, some don't. But then it's getting to know your staff again. It's noticing when that workload is increasing and being able to have those conversations about how we can support that member of staff in that moment. But yeah, I would encourage, again, we've got this massive turnover rate at the minute. If someone doesn't feel that they can work best in one way, don't let that be their only way. My only danger and concern with everybody remote working is that we lose those like wonderful water cooler moments where like someone looks a bit jaded or down when they're getting a cup of tea, and so you can be like, oh, are you okay? You don't look quite yourself. You miss that when you're not in a space. So I don't support 100% remote working as an organisation, but flexibility is key.
No, 100%. That sort of feeds into what we were discussing before we started recording, which was, I guess, like two key issues that are affecting islanders at the moment, and that was sort of an almost epidemic of loneliness, especially affecting like the younger generation, which I guess speaks to the value of, you know, having that office space that you can come into and create that community rather than just completely isolating yourself like every day of the week working from home. It can be great for some people to come into an office and, you know, have that social interaction. And then we said another key issue that was affecting islanders was sort of cost of living and financial pressures, which I guess employers should be able to discuss with their employees if they're facing like real big financial worries that are really affecting their productivity and their mental health.
Absolutely. Loneliness is actually a young person's problem these days. Everyone thinks it's the older generation, and you know, once members of your family either fly the nest or sadly pass away, if you're talking about the much older generation. But they are very good at connecting in the real sense. You know, I work at Jersey Sport as a small part of my time during the week, and we have walking groups, and they are littered with people with stories, and it's so fun, it's so engaging, and you always leave it with a smile. I grew up in the generation where tech was booming, and I fortunately had both the combination of real life interaction and online interaction, so I have the balance of both. I love meeting my friends, going for a coffee, working out together, but then I connect with people online in a way that I never could have dreamed of when I was younger. The people in the generation below me, or even in the generation below that, if we want to go right into the teenage years, they haven't got the skills because they haven't witnessed people interacting in such a way. All they know is how to talk on their phones, and we have a generation of like 19 to 25-year-olds, or sorry, an age of people that probably started their careers during a pandemic. So they didn't even have a physical induction.
Or had their university degrees. Like before that was remote for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
And then your first experience of the workplace can be remote. Like that must have a huge impact.
Huge impact. You kind of lose the ability to socialise. And say you are the brave one who wants to open up and start making conversations with people. They're probably glued to their phones or their screens. So again, they haven't had the kind of luxury of networking and socialising in a way that I or people who are older than me did. So this remote working can be really unhealthy for those people because if they're exercising on their own, they're socialising on their own, their hobby is a solo hobby if they're playing music or, you know, rock climbing or sailing, whatever it might be, or they love reading. It's not often a group activity unless you're in a book group.
Yeah.
We are seeing lots of people becoming more and more closed in, and therefore their support networks are closing in and in and in. Mm-hmm. So they're the people I fear for the most at the moment, the younger people. Not to say that this loneliness isn't across the board for any age group. It's certainly not discriminatory of age, but these are the real key people that we know are having problems, and they're also the ones who are leaving jobs if they don't feel supported. So again, they're not thriving in making good workplace connections because you spend the majority of your time at work, so that's where you connect with the people the most. But if they're moving around jobs, they haven't got the opportunity to.
And how could sort of an employer or a manager, if they're noticing that maybe one of their younger employees, they don't seem to be very confident or social with their colleagues, what might be a way they could sort of help them to become more confident or to become more social?
I suppose asking them, first of all, you know, getting to know them and understand them. And it might not be a workplace solution that they come up with. It might be helping them to kind of signpost, interact with hobbies and interests outside of work. But perhaps creating a mentoring scheme, or if they know that there's someone else in their employee kind of network that feels the same. But also, people have changed so much. It used to be your work socials were booze fest, kind of people get blackout, you know, day trips to France, whatever it is. But having a variety of social activities that people can choose to take part in, obviously they're not usually mandatory, but if every social occasion is Friday night drinks, you know, if it's Pimm's O'Clock somewhere, or if you're going for boozy lunches, Christmas do's, whatever it is, having a variety of them. So maybe you do like say it is Christmas, because that's a key time when people overindulge with alcohol. Having a Christmas movie night where you all hire a space, or you set up a projector in the office with bean bags and you watch a movie. No alcohol involved. Go for a brunch, go for a walk, do a meditation class, whatever it is. You know, even just silly things like craft workshops, wreath making. I don't know why I've stuck on Christmas. I apologise. It's May. But I just try and link to the times where I know people struggle.
Back onto the sort of cost of living issue, do you think that affecting people's mental health at the moment?
Absolutely. From my own personal experience, purchasing a property on the island was horrendous. And that I found was my biggest financial stress, getting on the ladder. And then starting a family became an even bigger financial stress. And I had to withdraw my pension in order to take unpaid leave. So unless I had my pension, which I've now sacrificed safety in my future, I couldn't have got by. And it's not even just buying a property, it's the basics of filling up your shopping trolley. You regularly see the increases in the supermarkets, but we're not really seeing the regular or equal increases in terms of our payment in order to support that. So I'm not a politician. I don't know what the solution is, but I hope one comes quickly. But I can see how, you know, if we're talking about mental health, poor mental health, it's not just the conditions we need to be aware of. We need to be aware of the factors that impact our mental health. Debt is one, substance misuse is one, loneliness is one, and I could sit here for the rest of our podcast just listing the factors.
And they all feed into each other as well.
They do, absolutely. And they all come with their own unique stigma. You don't talk about finances with your colleagues unless you've won a scratch card. You don't talk about substance misuse. Often people smell it before they disclose it. Remote working, we don't have those moments where someone looks a little bit hungover, or they reference a big night out, and we ask them, you know, you've been drinking a little more than you used to. Is there something you want to talk about? Like these moments are, or even just having those conversations, they're difficult. So that's where raising awareness, getting those small, short kind of interventions in terms of awareness sessions or training sessions, they go a long way.
I think that's what it all comes down to, really, isn't it? Is like creating a culture change in workplaces and making people feel supported and like understood. You're
still a person at the end of the day. You're not just a number in an office, but we have been treated like that for so long. And I think people do go like, are you all right? And they hear fine, and they think, well, I did my job, I asked. But fine. Like, no one's fine. So ask twice if you hear the word fine.
Yes. I just wanted to speak a little bit about your very interesting and varied career journey.
Eclectic.
So you started off working in the prison, and then I wonder if you could maybe walk me through like a few of your different jobs and maybe what some of the highlights of them are, and then how they've sort of shaped where you are today and what you're doing with your business.
So I actually started as a PT before the prison. Yeah, add another one to the list. Yeah. How much time have we got? And I did love it because my passion is health in whatever space that is, whether it's mental health and physical health. But I was so young and I kind of lacked boundaries. So I would have 12 to 14 hour days within a gym, but I would probably only be working with a client for 4 of those. And I had reached out to the owner of the gym at the time and said I needed help, and he'd promised me, he gave me the PT patter, he gave me the good sell, but then never followed through. So then I decided I want to work in an employment rather than being self-employed, and I ended up at the prison, and I absolutely loved it. It was great, it was wonderful. But even in that space, you'd expect the prisoners to experience poor mental health, but the staff were just as bad, if not worse at times. Really? And from working within that, trying to promote change, I actually created, it was my very first wellbeing policy I created, and it was in the prison, and I presented it to the governor, and I ironed my uniform, I polished my shoes, and he understood there was an issue, and he said he'd support it, and a year later I was still there not seeing any change. So I felt like I needed to do something on the outside to provoke change, move things forward. So that's when I started working for Mind Jersey. And again, I had a wonderful 5.5 years there. I loved it. I met all sorts of wonderful people, friends that I still have today. And it gave me the skills that I have now in order to help create change. So I worked there for 5.5 years, and then I had a period of time off work to start a family, and I have my little daughter now, who's giving me a whole new set of challenges to work with. And then my return to work before starting my mental health and wellbeing business, I went to Jersey Sport, and I also work in a company called Birthable. And within those 2 organisations, I work in inclusion and promoting the benefits of physical health, not only for exercise to support us physically, but also mentally as well. And that fits in really nicely to the theme of this year's Mental Health Awareness Week, which is moving for our mental health. So obviously you're very passionate about movement and about sport. It seems so obvious. Yeah, we know that exercise is good for us, but maybe you could set out some reasons why it's so beneficial for our mental health to move our bodies. I think if you put it in basics, setting yourself a goal and achieving it, it builds your self-esteem, makes you feel good. We know the science, the data tells us that physical exercise can be as effective as medication when treating mild to moderate depression. Wow. So if we're moving away from the medical medicine, that's your one size fits all, here you feel like this, have this, it doesn't work for everybody. So having that variety in your kind of wellness toolkit, and what a better way to do that than for exercise. For me personally, whenever I go to whether I'm hosting it, I'm joining in myself, anytime I'm in a physical activity environment, so I'm not just talking about sport here, I'm talking about moving your body in whatever space that looks like. It's the community spirit, the connecting with others. Yes, you can do a home workout in Joe Wicks and you'll still feel good, but what I love about my gym community is I go there, the people know me, they speak to me, we vent, we get a sweat on, and then we feel good afterwards. And I can't speak more about the power of connection through physical activity. So whether you're moving more, includes a couch to 5k, or it's pushing yourself from your triathlon to your Ironman, or if it's going to your very first yoga class, I don't care what it is, as long as you're moving. What sort of advice would you give to someone who might be struggling a bit with their mental health and they feel sort of hesitant to reach out to their employer, or they feel like they don't have a solid community at work? What would you suggest to the employee to do? It's always really daunting. That first step of asking for help can be the hardest. There's lots of wonderful literature about seeking help. Mind UK have a document on their website called Finding the Words that you could use to go to a GP appointment. But on the very basic level, find an ally. Find someone you trust. If you're going to speak to someone in the workplace, maybe someone of, a colleague who sits close to you that you have a good rapport with, share with them. And I promise you your shoulders will drop. And perhaps they've had a similar experience, but they haven't been feeling that they can share it. And then approaching your employer, like I mentioned before, it's actually illegal to discriminate someone in Jersey against their mental health condition. I know that still doesn't make it any less daunting. There's still that stigma of, if I disclose, that my employer won't think I'm capable, but it's not that. And if you frame it in a way that, I want to be at work, I want to be supportive, I want to help the organisation, I just need help from the organisation to do that. I think the conversation will be more positive than you fear it will be.
Yeah, exactly.
There's often, the fear of something is often bigger than the thing itself. But it's daunting, I know it is. There is a huge stigma, especially still around men's mental health. And depending what industry you're in, those stigmas will be bigger than others. But I promise you, asking for help will be the best thing you ever did, whether it's in the workspace or outside the workspace. There's so many local charities. I mean, I could list for years, but you've got Mind Jersey, the Jersey Recovery College, the Listening Lounge, so many places. And if you're completely lost and you don't remember the names of the places I just said, start at the GP, because they're the gatekeeper. You can do a lot of stuff online, self-referring now, through the gov.je website, but if you're completely lost, go to your GP.
Experience times where we've struggled with our mental health, and I'd say probably everyone in the world has. It's not unique to one person, so no one should feel like they're the outlier and speaking about that. I'm sure everyone would be surprised about some of the people who've experienced that we'd never think of, that they'd faced any struggles, because they seem really confident. You don't know what people have gone through.
You don't even have to go far in the world of celebrity. Caroline Flack sadly took her own life. Robin Williams, David Beckham's been really open about his experiences with OCD. You're the odd one out if you haven't had a mental health problem.
But yeah, I think it's great that there's so many different companies now that are obviously reaching out to you and your services, and to other sort of charities, get them to come in and give a presentation. Even though it's been very slow, we are seeing these changes.
I was just about to say, the conversations are even positive. We're speaking about mental health in a positive light here.
Yeah.
It's new and it's exciting.
Exactly. But thank you so much for coming in. It was great to chat to you and meet you, so thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having
me. Thank you for listening to this special episode of Bailiwick Podcasts for Mental Health Awareness Week. I hope you enjoyed hearing about Jennifer's journey and the ways that employers can create a more supportive culture at work. To read more on this story and for other mental health related content, visit bailiwickexpress.com.